Keith? I'm talking to Keith.
Yes.
Did you know that the two most common elements in the universe are hydrogen and stupidity? Harlan Ellison.
Yes. Remember, the mic is live, Greg.
Okay. Well, that's right. Well, it's a good way to begin.
Yeah, why not? Hydrogen and stupidity.
Hi, this is Greg Hildebrandt. I've been a professional artist for 62 years. I've done a lot of artwork in that time, and I'm still just trying to get it right.
Hopefully we'll get it right
we
this time.
are live. I think so. Maybe we did. Anyway, how you doing today, sir?
Good. Just carrying on after yesterday with the phone call, the business that we had to do, and went back to this painting, trying to get it right because I really messed it up. I mean, I got up this morning, took a look at it, and I saw that this foot was down here. That leg was about this much too big. That whole, I said, what the hell? And I instantly re-measured everything and redrew it and blocked it in. But that's the whole trying to get it right thing. You never. It's a constant effort.
No. Have you ever done anything like that, but found it too late?
Well, it's only too late if the job is handed in and it's reproduced.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I can't stand to look at my stuff. It's like rarely. I mean, it's like this nagging obsession to try to get it right since I was a kid, and that's the pursuing the carrot thing,
Yeah.
And once in a while you hit it. There's these phases where you approach it with great enthusiasm, always. I don't care what the heck it is, whatever I'm working on. There's great expectation and anticipation, and your mind's going, everything's happening, and you get into it. It's looking. Then there's a point where all of a sudden, oh, that's a piece of crap, and it's like it just hits you like, oh my God, and then you keep at it. I read an interview with Andrew Wyeth years ago. He said that he liked to leave a painting when he was psyched. He was totally turned on and psyched, and he'd stop right there, turn the lights off, and walk out of the studio. So it's still living in your being, as an excitement. Not you're screwing it all up and it's getting right. It's a bad time. You know what I'm saying? So I try to.
Yeah, because when your mind goes into a hole, you're just digging it further and further.
I mean, you're gone. You're miserable. You're a misery, internally, externally. So I try to work it so that by the end of the day, I'm kind of like looking. I'm looking at it and then I work, and then there's a glance where I'll take a fast glance. I'll go get a cup of coffee. Come on. Oh, that looks good. Then I'll quit.
Yeah.
It's like later on in the day. I'll quit right there, and I won't look at the painting for the rest of the night. I'll come down here and draw, or I'll just keep my eyes off of it. I will not look at it.
No sneaking peeks.
No, because I'll look at it again and say, it looks horrible. You see what I'm saying? And that goes back and forth like that constantly with me. I think it probably with any artist, right?
Yeah. Hey, before we get going, man, I got to show you something. I got this today. My mom sent this to me.
Oh, fantastic.
In the mail.
That's great.
Now I feel like I want to go lick a metal pole. Just to see. But I thought you would appreciate.
I love that. That's really cool. I love that.
The flick hat.
Yeah. It's like you need a mask with that, I got cool stuff here too. I'll pull it out for the next time. I have a World War II gas mask. The whole thing,
Did you recognize what that hat was from? That's the little kid that licks the metal pole in A Christmas Story.
Oh yes, okay, what am I talking about? Yes, of course. I kept thinking of Rocketeer. Of course, no, that's not. You know,
Well, it is like an aviator hat or a
Yeah,
Red
yeah,
Baron
yeah,
hat
yeah.
or whatever.
Fudge. Oh, only it wasn't fudge. It was the queen mother of dirty words and all that stuff. That's
Yes.
exactly how it happened with me too, as a kid. Little
Yeah.
kid coming home from school and say, "Pass the potatoes," and my mom, "What did you say? And who? Where did you hear that?" And instantly the word jumped out of my mouth. Frankie Marciano. He lives up the street. I just blamed it on Frankie instantly. So she called on the phone with Frankie's mother. What? Exactly like the movie.
That's fantastic. All right, man. So we're going to bring the conversation back to where we left off yesterday. And you were telling us some of the stuff that you were working on and the stuff that was going on in society um, leading up to the Lord of the Rings stuff, right? And,
Yeah. Well,
those those books, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they were in the 60s, were still, it was kind of underground, right? It was more the hippie movement
yeah. I
and
think
things like that that really,
well, the kids in college mainly they were in the '60s and in the '70s. It was through the Vietnam War period where the whole polarization, like it is now, that whole thing was intense and massive. And a lot of people were just dropping out, kind of like and going into their own minds, and they disappeared into Middle Earth, where it was clearly the ambiguities of the time for many people about Vietnam. It was ambiguous. Who are we fighting? Why are we fighting? The body counts every day, on the television. And
mhm.
but rings were it's really clearly defined who the good guys and the bad guys are,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah.
could really get into that and just be there and live in that world. And so yeah, I remember in the '60s when I was still working for Fulton Sheen. I commuted into the city every day, and you start to see written on the walls, graffiti on the walls, "Frodo lives,"
Okay.
on the sidewalk. So it was, yeah, it was that was all going on, and kids were reading it in college, mainly.
And so did that popularity, did it carry through uh, from that late 60s through the 70s? Like,
No, it it,
uh,
it it sort of flattened out, and like I think I said yesterday that Tim Kirk did a calendar. If
mhm.
and there was a bunch of art in there about from the rings, and on the back they were looking for artists to do the rings, and they said just call the art director at Ballantine Books, Ian Summers. And I called Ian, and Ian said, "Bring your portfolio." We drew some pictures, and we brought a whole portfolio of a bunch of stuff that we had been working on, all through the '70s, general illustration that we were doing for Golden Books and all kinds of people, and
Yeah.
they
So,
hired us right away.
but before we get into the actual painting,
Mm-hmm.
paintings of all those iconic uh, scenes that you guys depicted, um, and just trying to set the scene of the time frame and with
Yep.
what you were doing and all of that. So the Lord of the Rings kind of maybe flattened out a little bit. So it wasn't like you guys were coming in on a project that was super hot at the
Not at all.
time.
Not at
Everybody
all.
was talking.
We had
And
read
you
it.
also so you'd mentioned that you're working on another documentary film at the time, and you had juxtaposed images of the kids, which I believe that you use your kids,
Yeah.
with their blankets and all that, and then shots of the civil rights movement going on.
All kinds of stuff. But Tim and I had grabbed footage, and we were continuing to grab it we had a Bolex, a handheld Bolex. Man, it was all, and then we brought a tape recorder. We go to, like into Washington Square Park and get people sitting around singing. I remember one piece was like the Woody Guthrie song, "This Land Is Your Land," "This Land Is My Land," just a group singing and chanting that song together, and really beautiful shots of all kinds of people, different ages and everything singing. And we used that for part of the film, and we were just cutting around the country of all this footage that we had shot, like all kinds of different cultures and races and societal stuff, plus the protests that were going on, the
Okay.
civil rights and anti-war stuff and everything like that. and it was a free flowing film for 10 minutes, no words, just local sound and music that we grabbed on the scenes, and just kind of blend them and morph them together, moving from one sequence to the next, just kind of like with the kids in the car, sort of like as though you need some sort of like overall container for it, but the two
Yeah.
kids as though they're just traveling in the back of a seat, and this world's going on, and I think we ended by going into a tunnel or something like that, and
Now, were you doing anything like painting wise, illustration wise, or anything like that at the time?
yeah, I mean, we had already, like I say, we were working for this Fulton Sheen, and then he was moved out of the office, and a new group took him. We did not get along, and we had went to Africa. We went with them to Africa, West Africa, Ghana, to shoot missionary activity for the Catholic Church, and then Tim and I were shooting all that stuff, and then we connected with on another level in Ghana of the real story. We connected with a bunch of Dutch priests who were really questioning what this was all about, what Europe did to Africa, how it was all carved up. We talked to a Ghanaian, Father Sarpong, I remember his name. He was a Ghanaian anthropologist, a priest, and he gave us the whole history of Africa. We just sat with him with a tape recorder, and we went to Accra University and talked to students. The riots in Newark and Detroit had happened already here in the States, and these kids, and I was asking them, like, what do you think about people coming here and preaching to you, and the missionaries and stuff? He said, go back to your country and make it right there before you come here. It's like, so I'm gathering all that kind of footage.
Yeah.
Priests really questioning what this was all about, what they had chosen to do, and really introspective. So we got back with this group, and we showed them a bunch of the footage, but then we started editing on the Moviola. Those are the days of real film, and you cut on the Moviola and the hot splicer and whatnot, and we put together a rough cut of all the footage into a kind of a sequence. We had a priest who we got. He was a literary guy over there. It worked on a newspaper, and he narrated. We just shot him on the beach while he was narrating the whole history and talked about Africa and the people and the church and involvement in society. And on the Gold Coast there was the Fortress Almina, where the slave trade took place. They brought the people in there to this fortress, and they were then shipped off, around the world. And we got all that stuff. So we put all this stuff into a film and then showed it to this new regime. They freaked out. They didn't want to see any of that stuff. They didn't know we were shooting it. We just shot the official footage and then mixed it with everything, and we were fired in 45 minutes. So, but fortunately, the film never got completed, which is one of the regrets of my career, that because it was so much an introspection of the whole, just what I said, But I could see the writing on the wall, and we had already, while we were editing the film, going off and bringing a portfolio around the city, around New York, to various publishers. And the first one was Golden Books, Western Publishing, Carlo DeLucio, who was the art director. In those days, you could pick up the phone and call an art director, and they say, yeah, come on over. And so he was fantastic. What a great guy he was. I met so many great people in the city. And he didn't have anything ready for us, but then he turned us on to Frank Lamacchia at Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston. And Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston was redoing textbooks. They were starting to do all the readers in textbooks, and they were doing a series on trees, nature appreciation. And so the first book, the job that they gave us, while I was still working, for the church, at home, I was working on this book on these two little girls in New York, a Caucasian girl and a Hispanic girl that adopted oak tree in Central Park. And so you go to that and you take pictures and you check, they was writing about the tree and the acorns and, the whole thing. And then we did another one that was called Our Very Own Tree, was the name of that. And then the next one we did was A Tree by David's House. A little boy, and he watches a sycamore grow inside, as he's growing up, the sycamore is growing. And so you see that. And that one of the illustrations out of that book took a merit award from the Society of Illustrators. The second book.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then, so we kind of had that going, so that when we moved out of the other job, we instantly had work to do. We were illustrating a lot.
You hit the ground running. Okay.
Hit the ground running. And then we were doing advertised for 7 years. Then we just advertising our children's book illustration. Platt and Monk is an old line publisher in Jersey. No, in the Bronx. That's right, in the Bronx. And they did like the little engine that could old stuff. They went way back to the 20s. And we did tons of books for them. And then we did Golden Books, and somebody's at the front door here. That's what that bell is.
Okay.
This is a place of business too here, you see, and a home.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, all that's going on before the rings. And
So we have someone asking, do you know if any of those books are available anywhere? Like,
well, I maybe on if you go to Google them, you might find them.
maybe on eBay or
Yeah.
something like that.
They're not.
I know
printed.
there's none for sale on Spiderweb Art.
No,
I know that.
no, God, no. I just have mine. My copies that I've had for the last 40 years or however long it's been. That was in the
Okay.
70s. That started in 1969. The film got finished in 1970. A little 10-minute film. And I would like to ask anybody out there if you could, because I tried to find this film. It's called Come to Life. It was done for the Franciscan priests, the Hour of St. Francis in Hollywood, California, in 1970. And I don't have a print of that film. I have prints of the stuff that I used to do for Bishop Sheen, but I had no prints of that film. And anyway, I'm sure somebody.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe word can get out of that, and someone
Yeah.
can find you a copy.
Yeah.
So okay, so now we're moving on to you've answered the call on the back of the calendar. You got hired on the spot, and now
we did a before the Judy Lynn and Lester Del Rey. Judy Lynn was the science fiction fantasy editor at Ballantine Books. Judy was a dwarf, and she was genius, and she was incredible. And Lester Del Rey was a writer, a science fiction writer. He and Isaac Asimov were buddies. And Isaac and Lester have been writing, I don't know, since the 30s and 40s, sci-fi. And he was the resident Tolkien expert, Lester. He had a photographic memory. He was a genius. Lester's card read Lester Del Rey, expert. That's it. And by God, he was. You could talk to that guy about anything, and he could go into it. I said, Lester, how the hell do you know all this stuff? He says, well, you have to write science fiction. Kind of like, you got to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
Mechanics, engineering, art, history, you name it. Anyway, so they approved us and our portfolio, and they tried us out first on a book, Farmer Giles, Smith of Wootton Major and Farmer Giles of Ham, was a Tolkien children's book. J.R. wrote a children's book. And we did a cover for that, a paperback. And they were happy with that. So they then fine. They gave us the first calendar to do. And like I don't know if I mentioned this, but Tim and I were the only professionals that showed up with that appeal on the back of the Tim Kirk calendar.
Really?
All the artwork they got in was from fans, amateurs, high school kids, college kids. No professionals showed up because there was some stigma at the time about fantasy art even with professional illustrators. It's like the Rings was being read by doctors and lawyers in the closet back then because they were ashamed to admit that they were reading fantasy. This was I don't know what the hell they thought or what their prejudice about it was. It was bizarre to me. My God, that's myths and stories go back to the beginning, to the cave. Well, you saw
Yeah.
the history of the world in the cave with Sid Caesar as the caveman there. Remember? And the critic came by. Anyway, but we were the only professionals that showed up. So we did, and they said, fine, go ahead. We got 6 months to do the job. So we had to do 12 months, a centerfold, and a cover. So that's 14 paintings in 6 months.
Okay.
And I mean, they're not necessarily simple paintings, it's like
They're not.
You had to go back. We hadn't read The Rings and The Hobbit for a few years. So we had to go back, pile into those books. And come on, you read The Rings, there's a 20,000 scenes you could illustrate,
Yes.
Gotta
Yeah.
boil it down to something. And our approach was, how the hell do you handle this? Oh, good guys, bad guys. Exterior, interior shots. Warm light, cool light. That's kind of like how we start to look at making the selection for the illustrations. key characters.
Now, with that initial calendar, did you focus on any one book, or did you take scenes from all four?
All of them, all four.
Okay.
It was all four. The centerfold was kind of obvious. I think that hit us fast. You know, it's the Fellowship. Boom.
Yeah.
You open it up and you see the whole band of them stretched out across a double-page spread. You know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you know, you just start spitballing around. Oh, you need some of the women. You need that. You know, of course, you need Galadriel. You need, you know, there's keys that you just sort of hit you. And that was done. It's like I say, in 6 months. And plus other things we were working on. Valentine then starts to give us. They're giving us. Ian Summers, the art director, and Judy is giving us paperback covers to do. So we're doing that at the same time.
Now,
when it comes out, and it they were well accepted. That calendar, people went kind of nuts about it. They Valentine always did an opening. This time they did but that particular calendar, they did an opening to announce the calendar. They went to Society of Illustrators for the night, and they had this big shindig. They hired somebody to make a cake, this great big wide cake with the whole fellowship across it. Our painting, whoever made the cake, it was phenomenal. They just kind of they got it, all the details and all the colors and everything. Crazy. It was fun. You know, it was a new gig for me. I'd been at this professionally since 1960, 59, 58. And now it's like, 1975. But all of a sudden now you're kind of like a star. Before you're a working artist. You're every day you're going in, trucking around, getting jobs and working at it steadily. But now all of a sudden there's a spotlight and there's a big hype around it. And the calendars go out, and then we start to get fan letters and all that start. So that was a whole different world.
Now, just getting into some of the particulars of the paintings, like how big were you painting these things?
Well, the first calendars they were smaller. I mean, I had a mentality of coming out of kids' books in a sense. So it's like you're doing things maybe twice up from the way it's going to be reproduced. You always do it bigger, so when it comes down, it's a little tighter. I'd say that the Fellowship painting was probably 5 feet across, though. That was the biggest one. Okay. And then the others, some of them were, yay big. And then, but the second year, that's when I went nuts. I said to Tim, you ain't seen nothing yet. That's kind of like, I wanted that mentality, And
yeah. So with it, that's very important, to mention and bring up, in that first calendar, and we can post links to some of the images and stuff for people that aren't not as familiar or they haven't looked at them yet, but the children's book influence is definitely there in that first calendar.
Yeah.
And,
very strong.
It's pretty clear. And then when that second one hits, and as you just said, you ain't seen nothing yet, the styles, you could tell that they're done by the same people. It blends very clearly, but there's a seriousness now to the subject
matter. The pictures are now, like I expanded them. Some of them are 6, 7 feet across. They're huge. They're mainly big. And with the first one, there was no time to really make costumes or anything like that. So you're using bathrobes and blankets for capes and everything. You're faking it mainly, But the second calendar, we built costumes. We actually made a whole orc armor for those orcs, all out of cardboard and paper mache, and then sprayed them silver. So.
Now you're talking about like for photo shoots and things of that nature.
Yeah, because again, to repeat, we didn't mention that I work for models for everything, for that kind of stuff, and so we made all the costumes, and props, and everything, and that on that second one, and shot, and then did the paintings bigger and spent more time on them. That's kind of like what that came down to.
Now,
I had a mentality. Before. Oh yeah, the whole other period there. Before I did the rings, and we're in the period before the rings, we were all that jump around illustration, advertising, golden books, and everything. I wanted to try the New York gallery scene out because I had a friend who I was living in a 2-family house and moved in, and he was downstairs. Bob D'Amelio. He was one of the guides in my life, and that's kind of like the way I look at it. You people pop up in your life, and they lead you kind of like forward and upward, sort of like that. That's my choice to believe that happens that way, you know. And Bob was one of those guys that starts to push me into the direction of not so much commercial illustration, but fine art, my own stuff, in other words, to make a distinction between somebody else's work that I'm illustrating now and my imagery of my own making. That distinction,
Okay.
which I had done it on and off with Tim over the years, but mainly we were commercial artists, you know, we were illustrators.
Yeah, you're a working artist. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know, Bob's given me all these clues, and he's totally into that world. He's the genius kind of a guy. He was an art director at an ad agency and a real hardcore pro and a great painter. He would come home, he would work all day, come home and paint in the studio all night long. And he had a huge hang up on Andrew Wyeth, Rene Magritte, and Edward Hopper, who I never even heard of all three of those guys yet. Strange, because I was always in this other world of, you know, commercial art. So I got turned on to them through Bob, and I loved those artists. They're three of my main guys that I admire. And so Bob was in a direction, and he kept pushing me in that direction. So I'm starting to paint my own imagery, which like, what do you paint, you know? So I say, the first thing I painted was a dream of this period that I went through, breaking away from this experience of the church, you know, this new regime that, you know, all that, the political, sociological, spiritual differences that we had, and the hell of it. And I had this nightmare, and these brutes hulking with whips and this flagellated skin hanging on like almost like a crucifixion device. And I painted that first just to get it out of my system, which was like, wow. I remember I started it one night and I just stayed up all night working on this thing with the idea that I would eventually do a major painting of it, you know, like a huge painting of it, because the original was only yay big, which I still have. And I could segue, I don't know whether I should or not, you know, jump into the future once I start.
That's okay. We're going to come back around, but you know, for the people, you know, listening, watching, or whatever, we do have to make note that the painting you're referencing that is now called The Crucifiers became one of the most iconic heavy metal album covers of all time. Black Sabbath's The Mob Rules cover.
Yes.
Right.
That's a whole other story.
You know, you just set the record straight there.
That's when it was done.
Came why specifically out of a dream.
Right. Or nightmare, as it were. And then I started to paint that kind of imagery. And then Bob, being very hip to the New York art world, would give me the list of galleries to connect with. And the method was you shot your paintings and slides and you sent them to the galleries. And he gave me the name of the top guys: Sidney Janis, Ivan Karpo, Kay Harris, Leo Castelli. These are the top line guys in New York City. I mean, the big names, you know. And I sent them my slides, and Castelli sent them back, and Janis sent it back, and Ivan Karp from OK Harris, major dude in the field, sent me back a letter, you know, and my slides saying that he wasn't showing this kind of work right now, but keep at it. You'll find a place in this city. So he was very encouraging. I mean, you know, he kind of like said, okay. So I kept at it, and I kept sending my slides around. And ironically, a little gallery across from Ivan Karp asked me to come in with my paintings. Now he liked what he saw, and I brought all my stuff and loaded. I had a station wagon back then, and I loaded all these paintings, and they're big, painted on masonite panels, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't like in this world of just kind of like landing on one thing to paint, you know. I was all over the place. My dreams, portraits of my kids, surrealistic stuff, straight stuff, you know, just all around. A buddy of mine on his Harley, super photographic, for lack of, I didn't know the term yet, photorealism. Bob didn't include me in as to that. He knew all about the photorealist movement, and that was newly happening in the 70s. There was the Whitney gave a big show. I remember going with Bob to see that show on realism, the return of realism. They were touting it. And I thought, well, what the hell is that, man? Realism's never left. I mean, You know what I'm saying? The abstract
Yeah.
expressionist thing had taken over for so long, you know, and op art and pop art and everything. And then, so realism now. In any event, so this guy's looking at my stuff and he's kind of like feeling this masonite panels. He said, well, what's this painted on? And I said, well, it's pressed board. It's masonite panels. He said, it's kind of cheap, isn't it? I said, well, Andrew Wyeth paints on it. So, so I said, it's pressed. What are you talking about? It's wood. It's like, you know, and he, all right. Then what it came down to was he said, look, you're all over the place. This is going to be a show, one-man show. You got to make a statement. So he points to the guy on the motorcycle. He said, give me 20 of those, something in that realm, and then come back.
Okay.
And I
So-
said, well, 20 of those? I said, my God, it took me a month just to paint the headlight on the Harley. You know what I mean? I said, I got 3 kids and I got to feed them. And he said, well, you came to me. I'm telling you, I'm giving you. You asked me, I'm telling you. That's what it's about. So I can't do this. So I went back, and I basically then said, okay, well, I called Tim. Let's do the rings. That's how I ended up doing the rings. My first choice was to go and do this gallery thing, and my second choice was to do the Lord of the Rings. Which I'm glad I did. I really am.
Yeah,
But then-
yeah. You know,
But the gallery story is a way to support the fact that that's how I felt about that second calendar. I was pushing
yes.
to these paintings to be worthy on a gallery type scale, you know what I mean, on their own by themselves, not just for reproduction only. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I do, and it shows. I mean, the work has lasted all of these years. You know, some 44 years now. Those
Yeah. A couple years ago.
that they've lasted. So
Well, it's
I can't
like,
imagine anybody putting that much time and effort into a calendar.
No.
Now.
And strangely, you know, I don't know, young people today won't know who Farrah Fawcett is, but it's outsold Farrah Fawcett calendar that year. She was the pinup girl of the day. Let's put it.
Yeah.
An actress, serious actor, and all that stuff. But anyway,
She was
Charlie's
Angels,
Angels, right? Yeah, Charlie's Angels. So, so that's kind of interesting that this calendar of all these little gnomes and dwarfs and hobbits and old guys with beards outsold this kind of, you know.
Sold the early day. You outsold the pinup model of the day.
Yep. Very strange.
So, and those, again, you know, that second and third calendar, with the color palette and the layout and everything, it has a very classical feel to it.
We did that. You know, it's like some of them, I remember approaching it like, I want this to be opera. I don't want this to be grand opera. That's kind of like the, you know, I want it to be theatrical and operatic. And I think for me, personally, the one that most hit it for me was The Healing of Eowyn.
Yes,
The rays of
absolutely.
light coming. I said, this is like out of Wagner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ring of the Nibelung. You can hear the music behind it all, you know? And we play. When I paint now, and when I draw now, or when we painted back then, we would play music that, you know, behind it and getting into all this stuff, you know? Classical, rock, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and it all just kind of feeds in and fuels it. Now, have those rings paintings, have they been collected into a gallery show?
No, they have been. Some of them have been in various galleries over the years. Yeah,
but
not all of them together ever.
Not a collective.
No. There's the book that, you know, the Tolkien, the making of book that Gene designed and works years on, gathering all the information and getting it together and working on it. That book is
that is when I met you 20 years ago.
Right. You guys were
working on that book with her, and you know, just my little tidbit of the story from back then. Kevin and I were taking out the transfer paper, the tracing paper that you'd done.
We did all the layouts on.
Oh, they're massive, you know, at
the size of the paintings, right?
25, 30-year-old pieces of tracing paper.
Sort of like It's
just
sort of like,
unfolding them, realizing that these things have more value than, my life at the time.
but the thing about that was when Jean and I started working together, she came out to my studio, and all that stuff was crumpled in a corner, all those sketches, because we threw it all out back in the day. Most
Yeah.
most artists did, most illustrators, because once it was used, once the job was done, there was no use for it. See, you threw it all out. She saved it all. She rolled and flattened everything and rolled them up and put them in storage and kept them for 20 years until she did.
Yeah. Yeah. A woman with a vision.
Yep.
Like,
Indeed.
these have value. And yeah, I mean, they're incredible. I mean, we're talking about the paintings and all that, but really, even just seeing the preliminary drawings
Yeah,
on that original tracing paper.
The thing about it is too, I'm still like then there was nothing different then about what went on for me before that or since then. Is I was still trying to get it right. Like I didn't really know. I never had any formal painting training. Neither Tim or I did. We had went to 6 months of art school, but there was no painting.
Yeah, you said 6 months, right? 6 months.
It was a basic art course, which was fantastic. I loved it. It was a reading, writing, arithmetic, perspective, anatomy, life drawing, color, and design. So I learned the color theory from Bill Meinzinger. But as far as painting, I painted on and off, putzed around with painting. I never considered myself to be anything. I mean, mainly I wanted to be an animator when I was a kid. Then I wanted to do
you said you were interested in Disney, right?
Disney, and I wanted to do special effects. I got totally hung up on the sci-fi films of the 50s. George Pell, particularly The World of Worlds, is still my archetype for me personally of the 50s type Martian invasion, alien invasion movies. And I got to meet George Pell finally, one of my childhood heroes, and pitched our Ursharak at him. Our story when we were pitching Ursharak, in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But that
hey, hold that Ursharak thought for just 1 second. Paul is asking, are you going to the winter edition of the Garden State Comic Con that is apparently at the end of January?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. Jean knows all that stuff. Jean tells me where I'm going because that's the way it works better that way. So she knows, and I probably won't because she's high risk, and I'm probably high risk given my age and all that stuff. So we probably won't.
Yeah,
probably
we have to say that the vaccine would have to be incredibly safe and incredibly effective, right?
I don't imagine we'll have it by that time.
Yeah. So yeah, so stay tuned to all the Spiderweb Art channels for any upcoming shows, conventions, things like that. Okay, so now we're back to Ursharak. What is Ursharak?
Ursharak was the name of the continent that we came up with for the story that we wrote. It was an epic. Well, the thing was, after we did the third calendar for Valentine, we then said to Ian Summers, this should be a movie. Tim and I were thinking about it as a film. Rings. Not animation, live action. This was 1978. And he said, well, let me check into it. So he made a few calls, whatever he did, found out that Saul Zantz had optioned it, and Ralph Bakshi was working on it for, his animation. So they had the rights. And so we said, that's that. And then I said to Tim, well, let's come up with our own story. Let's do our own story, and we'll try to push that, see if we can get that done as a movie. The stuff you do, when you don't know what you're doing, which is the only way to work, I guess,
Yeah.
Really jump into the white space and sink or swim. And so we said, okay, let's do this. And started to hammer out a plot line, which is going to be epic fantasy, sword and sorcery, good guys, bad guys, all that kind of stuff, and a quest. So we finally get a thing hammered out. And the irony of this, though, is we ended up with a elf prince, Aelwyn the elf prince. And he's all the white elf, with the blonde hair and all in white, and the magic sword Elfgard. And then we have the wizard, Elgan the wizard. And we have Hugh Oxen, who is the masculine, thing, the male dominant kind of figure. And then there's Zyra, the Amazon princess, and all these cast of characters that we invent. and our Death Lord of Golgoroth, which is encased in armor, all in black armor, and with a giant mace, with the whole idea that he's encased in this medieval with horns, so that you never see the guy, because that's the most terrifying. And he's related to Aelwyn, our elf prince. He's his ancestor, and only Aelwyn can destroy him. And he's of course taking over the world, and he has to face him off. And we have our allied band, which we're calling it, and we have a Sasquatch type character, Ulu. He's like a 7-foot tall, hairy guy. So we have this elf prince, we have this Death Lord, all in black, encased in metal, with this tall, hairy guy, and then we get the call, while we're developing it, to do a movie poster. His ad agency calls us and says, "You guys got to help us out. We got a science fiction movie. They need a poster. He's not happy with the poster he's got. You got to come." I says, "Oh, okay." So we go into the city, and it's the Star Wars poster. And I'm looking at all the photos. This blonde kid with the white outfit, and the tall, hairy guy, and the black encased in armor, black evil guy. And I'm freaking out internally. Now, Tim and I were the only two people that saw these characters that we were designing. They never went out of my studio. So it wasn't like they were out in the air somewhere. And it's like, what's going on here? It was like totally freaky. So
maybe in the collective unconscious, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah, like Joseph Campbell talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
Gene's motioning something here to me.
You had a question yesterday from someone about the most arduous painting.
Question?
I don't know if you got to it.
Not yet.
Okay.
We have not gotten to it, but we have also not forgotten it.
Okay.
And the Black Friday
Just
sales.
Just checking.
Gene's reminded me of the commercial side of this, of course, which is this is about part of it. So anyway, I mean, I'm there picking up after the third calendar and doing Ursharak, just starting to lay our story all out, write it, and we're drawing it all out, and designing all of our characters. I get this call to do this poster, and freak out, and I say, "Oh my God, it looks just like what we're doing, only it's space. It's not old magic. You know what I mean?" And I kind of like, maybe the film will we do the poster in 36 hours, blah, 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 bring it in, and and that's that, and go back to our story, Ursula. And the film's coming out in a week, because they needed it overnight. They needed the poster. We had come through for them once before with a poster for Young Frankenstein that never got used, but we did it overnight, and that's what they remembered, us working fast. And now we're famous now for the Rings art, so they called us to do this poster.
You're fast, and your name has some clout.
And the name had clout, and when they asked us, they said the director wants to make your name bigger on the poster, because he apparently was a fan of the Rings. I haven't met George Lucas. I still haven't met, but apparently he was a fan. He knew the work that we had done, and he knew that the recognition. So, use everything you can, because who knows whether a film's going to go over or not, right? So the film comes out in a week, and the freaking world goes nuts. I mean, you won't remember it, man. It was like BC and AD. I mean, it was like complete turnover. The world goes insane for this movie, and I'm
that was going to be my thing. We obviously, everybody knows how Star Wars turned out. So, but how did that all come back?
Well, the strange thing is, now while I'm coming up with Ursharak, and I get back and I'm very depressed now. It's like, oh my God, I got to take the helmet off of my Death Lord, because if I don't, once the book comes out, like the book wasn't coming out, we're still working on it. It won't come out for 2 years. The second movie came out already.
Okay.
No, our book came out first, and then the second movie came out. However that worked, I don't remember exactly, but. If I don't make these changes, people are going to accuse us of, copying.
Of ripping off,
The tall, hairy guy became a little short, hairy guy, And so, but then in that process of going to the William Morris agency picks up Ursharak. Now, we connect with them, and they're gonna be our reps for the project, because when you're hot, you're hot. And when you're not, you're not. When you're hot in the moment, we were hot because of the Star Wars poster and the Lord of the Rings. So it's like you could do no wrong, and everybody's throwing money at you, kind of like thing. You know what I mean? Not throwing money at me like that. They were handing me dollars. I mean, you were getting jobs. You know what I mean? based on
Yeah.
Star Wars. Hey, could you do me a painting of an exploding spaceship? You know, everything was going space all of a sudden. You know, you get these calls and do all that kind of stuff. In any event, but the William Morris Institute takes on the job, and then we're connecting with people in Hollywood, and we connected with all people with John Dykstra. And John Dykstra was the original ILM, and he's the guy that worked on developing the computer camera. And so he calls, and we go over. We get an appointment with him. We go over there in Hollywood to Van Nuys. It was in Van Nuys, California. He was still working at the same shop. It was in a industrial park sort of like place where they did all the Star Wars special effects. And he had his own operation now, Apogee, and he was doing Battlestar Galactica for TV. And so we went and met him, and he was fantastic. His whole crew was incredible. And he was separate, obviously, from Lucas. I didn't know anything was going on. I sensed something had happened. I didn't know why. I didn't really give a damn, I wasn't care about internal politic BS, And he was great and very enthusiastic. We showed him our pitch, which was like we had a slideshow that we kept, and various artwork we brought with us. And he wanted to be part of the project. He wanted to do the special effects. And
so hang on. The book is out at this point, right?
No, it's not yet. It's not out.
No. Okay. So this is still before the book was released.
It's before the book. We were just going to Hollywood for the ABA, the American Booksellers Association, where they were announcing the book. Bantam Books finally ended up with Urshrak. Ian Summers pitched Urshrak and got Avon and Bantam into a bidding war, and ended up with money that we needed to divide it between my brother and myself and my friend Jerry Nichols from Detroit, who wrote the book, he did the wordsmithing on the book. Because Jerry, we go way back to the teens in Detroit, in Michigan, and I always wanted to work with Jerry on a project, and he always wanted to work with Tim and me. And here's one of my cats here, kind of walking around, and this is Clyde. Where's Bonnie? Where's your sister? Anyway, and so he's knocking my quotes around. The man who has no imagination has no wings. Muhammad Ali. I like that one. Anyway.
That is a good quote.
Here's another great one. But I got to throw these in while I say this. This is from Thomas R. Benton, the American muralist. I know there is no such thing as failure in the pursuit of art. Merely to survive in that pursuit is a success. The only way an artist can personally fail is to quit work.
That's a good word.
Love that.
That's a good word.
You don't fail. No matter, it could look like a piece of crap to you when you're done at the end of the day. Oh, well, it's a job. That's not a failure. You're trying, you're working. The only way you can fail is if you quit. Anyway, that's for all you kids out there.
All right, Greg. So we're gonna hold the thoughts on Urshrak, because getting into
that's a whole other thing.
The development of it, and then also the fact that the book is a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, we made it there.
That's something to come back to. But we did get a question. I'm not sure if you're going to have time to fully answer this or not, or if you've had time to think about it. Someone asked yesterday, what is the most arduous project you've ever worked on?
I think just what we were talking about really is the prime one of getting Urshrak off the ground as a film through the William Morris Agency, contacting Hollywood, me on the road to Hollywood, the breakdowns that were occurring all through that project, starting with the Star Wars similarities. It was an uphill struggle mixed with enthusiasm and excitement, but still arduous as hell. And I almost, by the end of that 2 or 3 year period, I was really flattened. I could have it's a whole other story too. Jean basically saved me. That's when she came into my life, and because I almost got flattened out. Then there are other projects that were very arduous. It's like when we were doing the Marvel Masterpiece trading card set in 1994, Jean also took on Tim and me doing a Sunday and daily strip redo of Terry and the Pirates. Our friend Mike Uslan, filmmaker of the Batman films, exec producer, optioned Terry, and then went to Tribune Media, in Chicago, who owns Terry, and told him that he was thinking about doing a strip, and he called Gene and told Gene that, and Gene said yes to him without talking to Tim or me. And then we're working on the Marvel Masterpiece. She opens the door to our studio and says, "Guess what you're doing next?" And I said, "What?" She's Terry and the Pirates, a daily and Sunday strip, closing the door. Tim and I freak out. We freak out. It's like, what? And it wasn't so much like the work. I love work. I love the work. It's an obsessive compulsive thing, And I grew up on Kniff. I mean, I was born in '39, so I grew up on '40s comic strips in the newspapers. I mean, they were amazing artwork. And Terry, Mill Kniff's strip was like he was one of the gods. To all those guys who drew in Detroit, and guys who were drawing, were copying Terry and the dog fights and everything, that he drew.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Here's Dudley. He wants to. And
he wants to be a part of the show.
Not Dudley. That's our last cat, Dudley. This is Clyde. So there, we're doing these two things now. So I can't walk in one of the God's footsteps. I freaked out. So did Tim. And it's ink. It's black and white. Now I've done some ink work, but not. That's all. That it's a whole specialty in itself.
Yeah.
So there. So we're working on the masterpieces and doing Terry, doing masterpieces, doing Terry. And like, holy mackerel, that was extreme, exciting.
Now,
but arduous.
I vaguely remember this. You'll because you love the quotes. The infamous Tex Blysdale. You told me he had pulled you to the side when you got that Terry and the Pirates. And what did he say?
He said, "This will make a man out of you." This will make a man out of you. Thanks, Tex. I'm not a man already, I guess. It's like, it's so true. I mean, that's really being in the front line trenches when you're doing a realistic comic strip, daily and Sunday, like those guys used to do. I mean, you're not just doing little fast cartoon characters. I'm not diminishing that, but I'm just saying this is realism, machines and hardware and vehicles. And it's overwhelming. Exciting as hell, but overwhelming. And you're trying to figure it out as you go. You talk about like trying to get it right. I mean, every day on that strip was a figuring. I remember I panicked and I ran over to Joe Kubert's school, which I taught at for a while. And Joe was right here in Jersey, in Dover, New Jersey, one of the great comic book artists of all time, we all know. And his two sons are in the business now, Adam and Andy. And I ran over to Joe and I said, "Joe," I explained what there was. He said, "What's the project?" I said, "Terry and the Pirates." He said, "Well, I was going to do that. Not now, but the past." He had tried it once before and it never got off the ground. And suddenly Tim and I, who are two guys who have nothing to do with strips.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a disposition, not necessarily with Joe, but with other people that meet at the Cartoonist Society and places like that. "What are you doing this? How come I didn't get this job? How come you guys don't?" Kind of like thing.
Yeah.
It was like, and I felt very guilty. And on top of the Terry thing, you talk about arduous. I was a fan of Terry. Like I say, that's my time frame. And then there were guys, there's these big Mill Kniff clubs, fan club. Everybody's got a fan club. And certainly Terry and the Pirate fan clubs. And once that word got out that the strip was being done and the strip was being updated, oh my God, this was anathema. You can't do this. I felt that way. I'm going to profane a sacred object. You know what I'm saying? And that's how these guys were all feeling and talking and writing letters and complaining. But the simple fact of the matter is, Tribune Media owned Terry and the Pirates, and they said they wanted it updated, and they wanted it to push the envelope.
Yeah. So what year was this?
94, 95.
So, it's just interesting you say that as soon as people heard it, they started writing letters and complaining and you can't do this. So it just goes to show, the cancel culture existed all the way through.
Yep.
People just had to do it long form. They couldn't tweet their anger at you. They had to write a letter.
And they were intense, man. These people were crazy, long things. And then you know, it was in the Asian American side you got there, because I mean, look, I mean, when Milt Kniff did the strip, all comics back then were reflecting, in no uncertain terms, the prejudices of the times.
Yeah.
And let's not
Yeah.
kid ourselves or lie about it. It's all BS if we do. There's a nostalgia
Yep.
quality that I have that's immense for old comics and old comic strips. But if I go back and look at some of them and start to read Captain Midnight and the horrendous way they drew the Japanese, and it was overwhelming. And so the Asian American Society was worried about that we would be this kind of like racial, anti, Asian. And Mike Uslan, my God, he was free. Mike is nowhere in that category, neither are Tim and I. And had ensured them and had meetings and showed them the work, and they were happy, they were satisfied. We were not doing anything like that, obviously. But the fact is that, like I said, Tribune Media wanted it updated in the envelope pushed in terms of sexuality,
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
we have Pat Ryan, who's the male dominant figure in the strip, and the Dragon Lady. And in Michael Uslan's take, the Dragon Lady is Vietnamese, not Chinese, updating it, bringing it out of Vietnam and the whole war and all that stuff. And they have this love-hate relationship. So there's one group of dailies that Mike wrote, and Tim and I drew, was you start with the Monday strip, like 3 panels, and they're fighting with each other, kind of like you're getting, the next day they're getting closer. Third, fourth, by Friday, it's one big panel of the two of them, open mouth kissing. And
Right next to the family circus.
Next to the family circus, and that's what sank the boat. That's how the strip, they freaked out over that one. Aside from the profaning a sacred object, the contemporary people started screaming nuts. What's this? French kissing in the comics? And I said, he's American and she's Vietnamese. There's no French here. So so the LA Times canceled the strip because so many people protested. But somebody over there, some DJ or something, started reading the strips on the radio and explaining the drawings. That was a trip. It sounded like old 1940s. Mel LaGuardia used to do that with the comics back. And anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
So that was all going on. So you thought it was arduous. And at the same time, we're doing the Marvel masterpieces.
Yes.
And I had never done anything in the comics, and I really badly wanted to do it. And I'm thinking, what the hell? How am I going to handle this? Yeah. So I know we're getting close to
the wrap up time. Yeah. So
we're talking
gonna
Black Friday.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the Black Friday sales of spiderwebart.com. So anybody, that's watching now or will listen hopefully in the near future, sign up for our mailing list if you haven't done so yet, the spiderwebart.com mailing list. And we have a lot of specials and deals going on through the gallery. We have, 10% off of the original Tolkien work and 20% off of every other piece of original art going on in the gallery. We got the books on sale, Zippos, 10 signs, you name it. Most of that stuff, it's already marked down on the gallery. You can go in, check it out. If it's like the art and it's not marked down, we take it off when we ring it up. But really, there's a lot going on right now in terms of sales. Check out the mailing list. You can stay tuned on all of that. You can also see all these specials that are listed on the various Facebook pages or on our Instagram or Twitter page. So give us a follow, like, and share all of this stuff if you would. It's an honor and a privilege to get to talk to you, sir. You are a living legend in the art field.
Talking about art.
You're going to finish it off with a quote?
A quote. Gustav Mahler, the great composer. Fantastic.
I'm sorry, I do not.
Look up Gustav Mahler. Art's purpose is deliverance and the uplift from suffering. I like that. That's very high.
I do too. You've had a lot of good quotes today, man.
Well, also, Chuck Jones, the great animator, said, "Anxiety is the handmaiden of creativity." So, anyway, I like all that stuff. You know, they're kind of like boom, 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 boom.
All right. So I am going to be signing us off shortly, unless Gene is there to sign us off from that side.
Jane's doing the
All
technical.
right, here. Tell me what you want.
All right, fantastic. Hi, Gene, off to the side of the camera. Again, check out the spiderwebart.com Black Friday specials, and you can catch them again coming up on Cyber Monday. And give us a like and a share and a follow, if you will. And hopefully we'll be doing this again soon, right, Greg?
Yep, we will. This is fun.
All right. Good night.